Hi, this is Paul. And those of you who are longtime followers of this channel will recognize this guy. And those of you who watch Randos United and are part of the Bridges Meaning Discord, Jess is he's an OG, he's an original rando. And so Jess and I had a number of conversations fairly early on. You can find them on the channel. But I've been doing some talking about the hero's journey, about U-shaped story structure. And once I started talking about that, a whole bunch of OG randos said, oh, you got to come back and talk to Jess again about this, because he's been talking about that on the randos channel. So that's what we're going to do today. So Jess, take it away.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So this has been like a topic that I've been really interested in since, well, even before Jordan Peterson. I was just trying to figure out what stories were. And I'm an animator and I work in marketing. So it's just like, what is a story? How does it work? What is going on? And so when Jordan Peterson came along and all of his analysis with mythology and religious stories and the psychology behind it just sort of exploded my world. And then our first conversation was right when I had these brain bursts about the book of Job. And I was like, I got to talk to someone about this. And I was like, Paul's got a Calendly. I'll just talk to Paul about it since I was watching your videos, and that was our first conversation. So I imagine Job will come up in this again, because for me, it's almost everything. So I do just want to start out with this short video. It's like 4 minutes long. It's Kurt Vonnegut on the shape of stories, and it'll kind of get us going into what the U-shaped journey is and how it kind of maps out. So let me make sure that
of the world applies not just to his stories and characters, but to some of his theories as well.
Well, there's no reason why the simple shapes of stories can't be fed into computers. They are beautiful shapes. This is the GI axis, good fortune, ill fortune. Sickness and poverty down here, wealth and boisterous good health up there. Here's the very middle. Now, this is the BE axis. B stands for beginning. E stands for electricity. Now, this is an exercise in relativity, really. Is the shape of the curves of what matters and not their origins. So we'll start a little above average. Is why get a depressing person? We'll start the whole thing. We call this story Man in Hole, but it needn't be about a man, and it needn't be about somebody getting into a hole. But it's just a good way to remember it. Somebody gets into trouble, gets out of it again. People love that story. They never get sick of it. All right, not copyrighted. Another story, also a beautiful curve and easily fed into a computer, called Boy Gets Girl, but it needn't be that. Just a way to remember it. Start on an average day, average person, not expecting anything to happen a day like any other. Find something wonderful, just loves it. Oh, God damn it. Got it back again. People like that. Now, these are beautiful curves, and this gets a little complicated. Computers can now play chess, so I don't know why they can't digest this very difficult curve I'm going to draw for you now. And it so happens that this is the most popular story in our civilization, Western civilization. As we love to hear this story, every time it's retold, somebody makes another $1 million. You're welcome to do it. Now, surprisingly enough, I've said it's depressing. You know, people don't like stories about below average days and people. But we're going to start way down here. Worse than that, who is so low? It's a little girl. What's happened? Her mother has died. Her father has remarried a vile-tempered, ugly woman with with 2 nasty daughters, big daughters. You've heard it. See? Anyway, there's a party at the palace that night. She can't go. She has to help everybody else get ready. She has to stay home. Now, does she sink lower? No. She's a staunch little girl, and she has had the maximum whack from fate, which is the loss of her mother. She can't go any lower than that. Okay, so the fairy godmother comes. Gives her shoes, gives her stocking, gives her mascara. Gives her means of transportation. Goes to the party. Dances with the prince, has a swell time. Boring, 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 boring. Now, there's a slight inclination to that line as I've drawn it because it takes perhaps 20 seconds, 30 seconds for a grandfather clock to strike 12. Does she wind up at the same level? Of course not. She will remember that dance for the rest of her life. Now, she poops along on this level till the prince comes, the shoe fits. She achieves off-scale happiness.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start with that because I think it'll get us going here. Let me, I have another visual I'll just share because the shape of stories, this is how I see the U-shaped journey. But just to give us a little bit more frame of reference, I just pulled a couple things here that we might already be familiar with. So like, here's the hero's journey. You've been talking about this, and
yep.
Everyone who talks about movies talks about the hero's journey. And for me, this is the same U-shaped structure. It's kind of, you can frame it a bunch of different ways, but you can see the guy is up there, he goes down and he comes back. It's even, you start at home, you go out from home, and then you return. It's any of those. And the 3-act structure, like the 3-act structure follows the same pattern, and you're like, well, this isn't a U shape, it's a mountain shape. But just like Kurt had on the y-axis, he had good fortune and ill fortune. In the 3-act structure, it's measuring tension. It's not measuring like the goodness of the fortune or the bad or the illness of it. So as this build, it's actually measuring how much tension is building in the movie. And actually, I've seen other 3-act structure ones where it's like wavy in between act 1 and act 2 and act 3, meaning that tension is rising and falling like that time that kind of pushes the story forward, so to speak. But we're basically still in this U-shaped journey, this U-shaped structure, depending on what the story is of. And then you might be familiar with this. This is Peterson's regeneration of stability from the domain of chaos.
Well, that sounds like turning wine into water.
So this for what I'm talking about, this is following the same exact pattern, this sort of descent into chaos from one sort of order down into chaos, then back up into a new, there's a transformation that takes place and a reintegration and all that. So what I want to talk about and see what you think about any of this is what is the U-shaped journey doing? And I have 3 things that I think it's doing. I don't think they're exhaustive, but I think it's pretty good. So the first thing is person making. I think the U-shaped journey makes persons, and we can kind of define that in a second and what we mean by that. The second is that I think it's transformative. So it's you can see this as like a character moves along through the story. They come out different at the end, and we're actually mad when there's no character development and nothing happens to it, or if nothing changes, then there's no story. So person making, transformative, and then the third thing, which I don't know if we'll even get to depending on time, which is just world building, that weaving everything together. This would be how everything comes together in the end. And the way I think about it is weaving is just a bunch of U-shaped structures all woven together. That's how you weave things. But let's start out with person making. So I'll just define person here, which would be and we can define it just like in the terms of stories for now. I think there's like a metaphysical shape to this U-shaped journey that applies to us, and I definitely want to get there. But as far as as in stories, so like what's a person? Like a person's any character. It doesn't have to be a human even. It could be an animal, it could be a thing even. You have, in Beauty and the Beast, you got Belle the Beast and a teapot and a candlestick, and they're all they're all quote unquote persons as far as I can tell. And even our animals, and they're persons in this sense. And you don't even have to have necessarily a lot of, Pixar has that little lamp.
Yep.
It barely had it. All of its personhood is in its motion. Mm-hmm. It just moves. It doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have eyebrows. It has no features.
Doesn't have as much as good old Kermit here and the Count
right.
and Joe Rogan.
Is that Joe Rogan?
Yeah, this is Joe Rogan.
Oh, that's so funny. But you can even see it doesn't even have to be an individual. It could be like the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch become like the family as a person, or in the show Friends, that group of friends becomes its own thing. It has its, I would just, for the sake of the conversation today, its own personhood. And so stories make these persons, and it make, it's making them real in a sense. So Harry Potter is this character, and part of the way Harry Potter becomes real to us, recognizable and stuff, is through his series of conflicts, through this story that he goes through, and in his relation to other persons in sort of the Harry Potter world. Without the story, Harry Potter isn't real. And without the level of conflict and the level of the story that Harry Potter goes through, where he's facing off with Voldemort, who is the incarnate evil, that determines how real he is. So Harry Potter, Luke Skywalker, these types of characters are very real to us. And they're actually real in the world. Like Harry Potter has Harry Potter world. There's the whole Star Wars world. These characters are very real. And they affect our lives, and they affect us in ways that are, if you're a strict materialist, whatever, you're just like, well, they're not really real. Like, well, okay. In some ways, Harry Potter is more real than I am in terms of effect in the world.
Right. He's got a bigger footprint than Jess or PVK.
Right. For now.
For now.
Well, I was even listening to I forget who I was listening to, but they were talking about Tolkien, and they were talking about how wouldn't it be amazing? Or he was even postulating, he's like, I bet God will honor Tolkien's world, and it's actually real in a way that beyond just something in our imagination.
Yeah. Well, I've got the same. I don't know if I should say this on. Well, why not? People. As a pastor, you wind up doing funeral services for people's pets. And of course, when and where I grew up, well, animals don't have souls, which, okay, that makes you feel a lot better when you go to McDonald's or In-N-Out Burger. But then when you're on the front lawn of a couple and their beloved dog is, breathing his last breaths there, and everyone is around and they're crying, well, what's happening there? And what about the resurrection? And I would not be at all surprised if God pulls our animals into the age to come through us. And in that sense, I mean, because our animals, we lend our personhood to our pets. We do it all the time in huge ways. But we, and reality is like that. That we make, the Velveteen Rabbit is this illustration that pastors have used for years. The Velveteen Rabbit becomes real because, and I think the same thing happens in terms of Christian salvation. Christ gives us his we level up in real because of Jesus' love for us. So I love that idea of God honoring Tolkien's world. I love that idea.
Well, good. And it's even like Peterson's obsession with Pinocchio becoming a real boy, and how does that happen? Okay, so why do we need Harry Potter and Luke and Frodo and Gandalf? What are we doing? Well, I have like a few things written out. So we need people to admire and emulate. So a lot of what we learn, you don't just get told, be a good boy. You have to be shown what a good person is. And usually, like, when I was growing up, I would try to copy the cool older guy that I thought had something going for him. I would be like, oh, what's that guy doing? Maybe I'll wear black shoes and tight jeans or whatever it was, and try to emulate that, whatever he's doing, because it looks like it's working, and I think I could do that too. And so it's not only just just admiring someone, but it's like I could do that. So, and this gets to like Peterson's whole thing when he's talking about playing house, and the kid is not like copying mom's movements or whatever, but they're acting out the gist of who mom is and doing things in the gist of how mom would say it or how mom would go about things. So that just is like Girard's whole mimetic thing, and it could even be the opposite. So the kid who rebels is actually falling into the same thing as the kid who is the goody two shoes. They're both trapped in sort of a mimetic response. Okay, we also need persons to unlock possibilities for us. So this would be, so the admiration and emulation is sort of things that are maybe like, they're closely related, but here's the example is the 4-minute mile. When the 4-minute mile was broken, how long after that was it commonplace for people to run a 4-minute mile? And even like those two guys that were competing for it, I don't know the story too well, but as soon as the first guy did it, the second guy did it almost immediately. And then after that, the following years, person after person started breaking the 4-minute mile. Now it's just, they're almost doing 4-minute miles in marathons. You're just like,
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Another example, a lot of the extreme sports, skateboarding, snowboarding, surfing, where they're doing tricks and stuff, especially. So like Tony Hawk, I forget what year it was. I believe it was sometime in the 90s. He during, I think it was during an X Games, he did 900, which is 2.5 rotations on the big vert half pipe. So he's a skateboarder. He's on the big half pipe. No one's ever done a 900 before. And he'd been working for weeks and weeks and weeks on this 900 trick. And he finally pulls it off in front of this giant crowd. Everyone just explodes. It's insane that he did this. Now, like in competitions, there's 12-year-olds doing 900s.
Wow.
You'll see 13-year-old kids, they're the top of the top still. They're great skateboarders, but they're doing 900s. That's what they learned growing up, because that's what you learn. And even if you go all the way back to the beginning of skateboarding, and you'll see this with a lot of like these sort of new sports. Remember when they had like the little banana boards, and basically skateboarding was just sidewalk surfing. And guys would do basically kind of surfing tricks on the skateboards, because people didn't know what skateboards were for yet. And basically there's guys like spinning around and doing sort of gymnastics or like something, like dancing on them or something, and going between cones. And I forget the guy's name, but he did the first ollie. He figured out how to ollie.
I don't even know what that is.
So the ollie is when you push the back of the skateboard down. The back of the skateboard hits,
right,
and then it pops the back of the skateboard up.
Oh, okay.
So you can you
sort of skip it.
You can jump.
Yeah.
You can jump in the air with a skateboard without grabbing it, just with your feet. So this changes everything, because now you can jump with this thing, and it looks like magic. My boys got skateboards a little while ago and tried to, my one son could kind of ollie, and then I got a skateboard with him. I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do it. It's so hard. I can't.
Yeah, your age.
I know. And then if I fall, I'm like seriously broken.
Oh, this is for kids.
No, right? So, but by doing the ollie, without the ollie, skateboarding as we know it doesn't exist. Like it's being able to jump the skateboard, which enables you to grind, and enables you to do all kinds of tricks. It enables you to go over obstacles and stuff that you couldn't do before. So that's we need people to unlock possibilities like that for us. That's like going past what we know. And Tony Hawk had the idea of doing the 900, so the 2.5 turns in the air. So, because they'd already done a 720, he'd done a two turns or whatever it was, a 540, 1.5 turns. So it was just like figuring that out. But like going from flatland to ollieing is like, that's entirely a different thing. And how that guy thought of that, it's on the verge of being some sort of genius work of art to be able to come up with that concept. And he was like just some sort of kid that was just obsessed with skateboarding, and he had like a little flat patio, and he was just out there every day with his skateboard, every single day. And there's all kinds of good documentaries about the beginning of skateboarding that are interesting. Okay, so and also I need to just say, like, it's good for persons to exist just for their own sake. Like this is the existential question is it good to be?
Yeah.
And I think it is, So even if a person isn't like admirable or unlocking brave new frontiers. The fact of just being and being created is good in itself. Like at a very deep level. So, you know, so stories are making these characters, but like I've already like moved on into real life. You know, we have tragedies in our lives. We have difficulties that we have to overcome. And what I want to say is like, well, if you've been through those, you know that those make you. You know, people like to say, oh, it was a test, or it was trying time, or I had to be strong, or maybe they didn't handle it well at all, but they got through it. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, even with the worst stuff, they're like, I wouldn't want to do it again, but I wouldn't want to just take it back.
Yep.
And why is that? You know, it's because, man, I'm already getting choked up already. It's because suffering makes us. Going through this U-shaped journey makes us, just like how difficult it was for Harry Potter or Frodo or whatever to go through their ordeal. We have our own ordeals, and to varying degrees, and but when we emerge on the other side, and we kind, you know, we've kind of dealt with, you know, these things can linger. We can be in trauma, and we can not have resolution. So it's not super, it doesn't have to be clean cut, but in the end, it's hard to, yeah, but it's hard to distinguish about who you are apart from that event. So,
and that's, you know, that really intersects with, you know, I've been spending time paying attention to Sam Harris and noting the suffering avoidant ethos of a lot of conversations and communities. Suffering is evil. It's like,
yeah,
no, not exactly. That's not right. And what you just noted there is critical in that if what you're able to do is banish suffering, there's a lot of goods you'll banish too. And we don't want that for our children. We want the right amount of suffering. And even when we know it's the right amount of suffering, that still hurts us. We don't, you know, part of us doesn't want to see our children suffer at all. And you could say, no, don't try anything on that skateboard, because the truth about learning a skateboard is there are many, many falls on the way to an ollie, and especially on the way to a 900.
Yeah. Yep.
But you say to your child, you go out there and you take those falls. And of course, as your children get older and as they're dealing in realms that are significantly more important than a skateboard, you watch them play with the things of this world and you hold your breath, because
the stakes are high.
The stakes are high, and they might even be life and death. And by life and death, I don't mean that, oh, they are going to physically expire as a result of that, although that might happen. But it might be that they are going to do something that is going to, in a sense, sort of like Jacob at the Jabbok, that is going to cripple them for the rest of their life. And you can watch it coming, and you can maybe even against your better judgment, you'll warn them. And then you find out, yeah, I knew I shouldn't have warned them, because, you know, just
now they want to do it.
Now they want to do it. I've given them motivation, but here we go. And no, that's a critically important point. Suffering makes us. And you know, you find this in the Bible all the time. these times of testing. And Jesus in the Lord's Prayer says, basically keep us from the time of testing. That's absolutely legitimate for us to ask.
Oh, for sure.
But God will say no. And then we sort of fall back on the bigger providence of, okay, he's going to lead me through this time of testing for reasons I may never understand. And that's that, again, that part is mocked by new atheists, but is deeply central to the Christian life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to talk about transformation.
Okay.
Which is linked to this.
Yes.
And we're moving right into it. So transformation's a little, so there's like transformation is different from growth. Growth is like sort of adding on to yourself, so to speak. Like you can grow bigger, stronger. But a transformation is when there's something that has, you move across into different forms, but you maintain your identity. So you're a child, and then you grow up and you become an adult. You're no longer a child. And there has to be some sort of transformation to take place. You're not just growing, although you are, but you actually have to do different things as a person. And then you go through another transformation as you become a parent. And then, there you can have spiritual transformations as well. So but I was a child, and I was a teenager, and then I was an adult, and then I got married, and then I was a father. Like I can track my identity across all those forms, but between them, there's these transformation periods, or these transformations take place. So, I mentioned it already. The character at the beginning of the story, good stories have character development and character transformation. Not all stories have character transformation. Sometimes the character enables the transformation of something else. So, like Dr. Jim was talking about the gunslinger who, the evil person comes in, the gunslinger or the sheriff comes out and removes the threat and reestablishes the town as a safe place again.
Right. The transformation is not in the sheriff's character. The transformation in the town happens because of the steadfastness of the sheriff. And that's a transformational resistant value.
And what happens in the town because of that transformation? This gets to my being made. The town becomes stronger, and the town has more trust in the sheriff, and the town has more resilience. And maybe there's been some tragedy that's happened that the town has to work through as well. But like these sort of events, these catastrophes, even like natural disasters and stuff, communities come together. I've seen it. If there's no problems, people are fine not talking to each other. As soon as there's an issue, like everyone's like, hey, are you good? Are you good? Are you good? Let's get this. Let's go do that. We're working together. Let's make this happen. These kind of things.
Or sometimes it goes the other way.
Yeah, where everything falls apart.
Yeah. And the transformation is a negative one.
Right. And so there's some sort of unveiling there that happens, that the disaster doesn't actually, it actually shows what's kind of at the heart of everything. And okay, so in stories, we can see these transformative processes, either character development or some sort of transformation takes place. Now, people know that this U-shaped journey works as a transformational thing. So initiation rites are a great example. So as young boys move into adulthood, or young girls into womanhood, usually it's a lot young boys in traditional cultures, they'll have elaborate initiation rites. There's one, I can't remember what it's from. I tried finding it again, but it was a tribe, and when the kids reach 12, 13 years old, they have to move from being under the care of their mother, and they have to then become men in the tribe. But you don't just say, all right, now you're a man, come on, let's go, because the kid still acts like a child, and the mother still mothers him as if he was a kid, and like, no, he's a man now. And so what they do is they take all the kids and they go out and they bury them into a cave.
Wow.
So they like close off the cave into pitch darkness. Then they unbury them and they pull them out. Then they take them off into the woods and they leave them there for like 3 weeks by themselves. And they say, all right, survive. And then after 3 weeks, they come back and find them. And, usually they're half starved and shivering and traumatized.
No, the Spartans had pretty significant rites of passage too. It's, I mean, and when you think about cultures have these for the sake of the entire culture. If you're going to be given a certain status in the group, you'd had better demonstrate that you are worthy of that status. It's serious.
Yeah. Well, in this initiation rite, the bond between mother and child is so strong that they were like, we have to do these things. Otherwise, we have to break that bond. And it's even like a frame thing. The mother has to be broken of her frame. The child has to be broken of its frame. And so we have to go through this experience. So this is like the downhill portion of, the U-shaped journey. And then what happens is they're brought back in, and they're brought back into the community and then celebrated as men. So this is just as important as the breaking. They have to be re-brought in. So there's like a feast, and there's like, it's almost, it's opposite of trauma. It's like feasting and celebration and all this stuff. To we're in a new world now. We're in a new order. And what you were before is dead. And now this is you. And now you're going to start doing man things or whatever. Another couple examples, like boot camp, going in the military figured this out. That's why boot camp works, and they do it. You're moving from civilian to military life. And then it's even when you're going from being a normal soldier to being an Army Ranger or a Navy SEAL. With the level of intensity requires you to like be stripped of your identity, your head gets shaved and all that stuff. And you get treated poorly, and you're, I don't want to use the term too frivolously, but you're traumatized in order to sort of break you out of your frame so that they can establish, or you can have established a new frame, and, we can also have negative examples of this.
Even hazing, which has got negative. Hazing is an initiation rite. I remember when, in our dorm at Calvin College, that when you come in as a freshman, you are hazed. It's not, it was basically tubbing. They would take you against your will and throw you into the bathtub in the community John, and they'd throw like crappy stuff in there, and they'd dunk you. And after you were tubbed, then you had the respect of the sophomores on the floor. And I think schools have done away with these things, and it's like, I'm not so sure you're necessarily helping. How hazing bad? Well, no, hazing, because schools do that with testing. So here you have to, and that's what we call it a test. here, we're going to take away all your books and we're going to put you and you're going to write this stuff down and you have to pass the test. If you pass the tests, we will give you this degree. And then you have a ceremony, which is graduation, and you move your tassel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, testing and hazing are not that far apart.
Yeah, I would agree. And then these things even happen just naturally. Like if you lose your job and you have to find a new job, where, you know, if you had a job for 10 or 20 years and that was part of your identity and is who you were, and you had a little community of people you worked with and all that stuff, and then now you have to move on, even going from just working to retirement. People have problems of figuring out, you know, it's not just like you just stop working when you go into retirement. It's like you have to figure out what you're going to do.
Right.
And then that involves like reframing the whole world. And so that's a little U-shaped journey that most of us are going to take at some point or another. And, you know, and then there's obviously just sort of, you can have trauma in your life that can lead to religious conversions. Usually traumatic events, you know, it could even be something you've done to yourself. You drank too much, got addicted to drugs, or, and then you need a way out. And so you become another person to get out.
Yep.
You know, you'll hear alcoholics say, like, you know, I think it was Chad, the alcoholic, said, I'm glad about my alcoholism. It brought me to God. And what do you do with that? You're like, probably would have been better if you didn't drink. But he's like, how would I have found God if I didn't drink?
Yeah.
You know,
or if drinking wasn't such a calamity in my life. Lots of people
Right.
drink, don't necessarily find God. In fact,
Right.
drinking is a part of the ceremony by which we meet God in church. So
Right.
it's a weird world, but, and this, I think, again, the emergence of a lot of the awareness of these things is part of the disestablishment of a lot of the new atheists that, no, on suffering, you're just wrong. And it isn't the complete banishment of suffering. It's, we need to suffer in the right way, but we're by no means, we're not masters of that to the degree that we know we ought to be. And so then with an initiation ritual, you bring suffering into that person's life in order to provoke a transformation. And our culture is built on that. You know, and even Christian ceremonies, baptism is a ceremonial ordeal. It is a ceremonial drowning. That is the
down and back
that's
up.
right. It's down and up, down into the water, back up out of the water. And what comes out of the water is a new person. Israel through the Red Sea, through the Jordan River. It's a down and it's an up. Yeah, stuff is all over the place.
Yeah, and it's through that process that Israel became a people.
Yep.
What is Israel if you don't have the going through the Red Sea and wandering in the wilderness? There's no identity there. Their identity is because they went through that. And so this is the creative nature of the U-shaped journey and the U-shaped story. And so you could see it as in how characters and places are made real through storytelling and through stories. And then why does that attract us? Why are we attracted to that? It's because those are the same types of forces that are making us.
If in fact you continue to believe that we are at a very deep level stories, because there is, I mean, that series that like Stories of Old made a number of years ago. I mean, the point of that little series was story is fictitious and so are you. Am I fictitious? Well, if you call someone fictitious, you're sort of calling them a story, because that's a category. But the idea is that no, story is a selection of, again, a selection of reality, because again, of combinatorial explosiveness, we have to select reality. We're not capable of seeing all of it as such.
Mhm.
So we select it. Well, because story is a selection of reality, therefore it's arbitrary, therefore it's not real. And that's in a way, the kind of nominalism that Vervaeke is complaining about. It says we need to get beyond nominalism, because once you sort of bite that and say it's arbitrary, well, hazing is arbitrary. What did going into an ice cold tub of water in Michigan have to do about being a member of a dorm floor? You know, it's ironic that here, basically the initiation rite that we had at Calvin College was another baptism. We were Baptists, at least
baptism of pain.
That's right. Well, and you did. I mean, the sophomores grabbed you and you fight,
Yeah.
and the sophomores didn't like it if you didn't fight. I mean, that's part of the struggle. And so kids who just resign themselves, it's like, it's not even worth it. You don't qualify to be part of our tribe. Give us a fight, show us, and then we'll prevail and you'll submit and we'll all be part of a tribe together.
It's deep. I think it's, for me, like, since I've been seeing this, like, it's in everything. It's in everything. And it's, so much of Christianity is the practicing of dying at different levels. So we have our baptism. We also, you hear the phrase "die to yourself." We want our sinful nature to die and something else to be reborn. We constantly, the whole thing is about self-sacrifice for the good of others, and this is how love works. It's through mutual self-sacrifice. And why are we practicing this? Well, there's a big dip we're all taking. The U-shaped journeys are all nested in each other. So you'll have, maybe like one or two really big U-shaped journeys in your life that are maybe like are about one or two major events that happen, maybe more. But then nested within those are all these other little ones that happen, this one happened in a month, and this one happened, and then with, you can have a U-shaped journey every day, I guess, if you wanted to. But we're all kind of going down this, and then at the bottom there's death. And so we can just jump right into Christ. Like, what is Christ doing when so Christ goes on the U-shaped journey? and why? Well, it's hard to say all at once, because like Jonathan Pajot says, everything is in Christ. But looking at it this way, when Christ comes down, dies, goes down to hell, is resurrected and ascends up, this is the U-shaped journey of them all.
Yep.
And what is he doing? He's making the world. It's a creative act. Just like stories make people, just like stories transform. That's what he's doing. The Bible says the Lamb was slain at the foundation of the world. Before anything was made, he was slain. It also says like he's the firstborn of all creation. And this would be this would be kind of like my thesis. I would say the U-shaped journey is how God creates everything. And it's all following Christ. It's all following the pattern of Christ. And when we see the U-shaped journey, when we're attracted to it, when we actually voluntarily do things that are risky for a possible payoff, these are all ways in which we are attracted to, and we're trying to follow Christ. We're trying to seek Christ, and he's hidden in all sorts of ways. Like we do it without realizing what we're doing. And I would say that the reason why, this gets at Jordan Peterson's sense of meaning. This gets at all kinds of things. But I think at the center of everything is Christ. And this is the pattern of how he creates everything.
Now, you and I sit here, we agree to this, but we've been the beneficiaries of a tremendous amount of bringing us to this point.
For sure.
That's such a difficult thing for someone to hear and think that Jesus of Nazareth is what, huh? Right. It's a big ask, asking people to believe that, and it requires an entire framing of the world and a certain, those who have eyes to see, those who have ears to hear.
Yeah, but I think everyone's attracted to this.
Yeah.
And they don't know it. I mean, they're not aware of it at the level that I'm proposing. Like,
right.
The reason why you like Luke Skywalker is because of Christ, is because he's showing something about Christ. And I would even say that this whole thing, well, I lost my train of thought, but yeah. And well, let's talk about, well, we're approaching like an hour. How much time do you have?
I'm okay. You can keep going.
Okay.
I'm very curious in the world building point.
Well, what happens when we avoid taking the U-shaped journey? We do this in all kinds of ways. Okay, so basically we're afraid. And I'm saying we, like myself. We want to have some kind of certainty, and we want to be safe. And we don't get that. And when things happen to us, we don't see reasons for it. And well, I mean, we get right into the book of Job at this point, I think. Job was plummeted into this U-shaped journey of his own. And we know from the beginning he was chosen because he was the best man. He was righteous and blameless. This wasn't punitive. This wasn't punishment. So what is God doing? Job wants to know that too. In fact, his whole frame is about, and his friends too, this is about a doctrine of retribution. This is about justice. And his friends say, well, you must have done something somehow, some way, because look at what happened to you. Like, and then look at how you're acting, and you're not being repentant. It just goes to show how deeply in sin you are, and how the way you're acting right now is the reason why all this came upon you in the first place. And then Job says, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything.
See, that just shows us you're guilty.
I know. And there's
Job fragility.
There's no way out for Job. He torments himself. He's just like, I don't know what I did. And and this is his question to God is, it's all within this framework of justice. And so he says, God, please, like, just indict me. Just bring me up on formal charges. So at least I would know what I did. And then I will wear, he says he'll wear it as a crown and he'll parade it around his wrongdoing, how he failed. But he's like, I didn't do anything. And then he goes, like, just before that, he goes through sort of a negative confession where he basically lists all the things he never did. And what does God do? Well, it's important to say God vindicates Job. Job's right in his assessment. He is innocent. He didn't do anything. And then also Job's reaction to it, God doesn't hold it against him in his crying out and his through all the insane things Job says, God doesn't hold it against him. But what does God show Job? God shows him all of creation. Like basically God is almost like, do you know how anything gets made? And there's Christian tradition where Job sees Christ in the whirlwind. And we don't get a real good explanation at the end. Job just says, I had heard of you before, but now I see you. And there's a difference between hearing and seeing. Seeing, you can behold something and it's beyond him. But he says basically, like, I get it. And it's that transformational thing where Job's framework of justice had to be broken. So, and he basically, there's that picture that Jordan Peterson likes of that guy is kind of peering out the dome into space. Yep. This is Job coming in contact with all of reality and coming in contact with God and kind of seeing God. And in this sort of vision of everything, this satisfies Job. And it's not even like for all we know, Job sort of returned to his tradition. He didn't, because his was just like a wisdom tradition. It was like the book of Proverbs. And so he goes back, but he's forever changed because he saw God. But he can't see God in his framework. It doesn't work. And so he has to have this transformative experience, and everything changes after that. Job, throughout Job's speeches, he talks about he's like, I wish I had a mediator. And he's kind of berating his friends. He's like, why don't you guys help me out, huh? Yeah. Here I am. Yeah. I'm like scratching myself with this piece of pottery because my skin's falling off. Why don't you help a guy out? Yeah. Be a mediator for me. That's what I need. And his friends are like, no, you're in too deep. Like, no one's going to help you. Yeah. Because there's nothing that's going to bridge this gap between you and God, and I'm not going to try to do that. Like, what if God gets angry at me when I try to do that? Yeah. Like, it'll be like, you're in a mess. I'll just try to help you repent so that God can restore you. Yeah. And God's God gets ticked off at his friends, is like, how you talked and what you said was wrong. And in fact, Job's going to mediate for you. And so there's a way in which Job's desire for a mediator, he actually becomes a mediator in the end.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you see that happen with people. Like, I have a friend who him and his wife went through a really sort of unfortunate miscarriage. They were overseas in India when it happened, and they went to the hospital there, which wasn't a good experience, and they had to fly out, and it was it was awful. And out of that, she started a counseling organization or small group organization to gather people together that had gone through miscarriages and to talk through it and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that got created. So that doesn't get made unless they went through that.
Right.
So what I'm trying to draw at is this very strong link between kind of going through these U-shaped journeys and what the U-shaped journey is for, and how it creates us, how it creates the world around us. What Christ was doing by going through this was creating and renewing everything. And he calls us to do the same thing, and we're afraid. I would almost think that this is the original sin. This is our judgment on him. It was like, this is not good, God. This is evil.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. The story in the garden is so sparse. And Peterson, nicely with Cain and Abel talks about the sparse nature of these stories, and it's obviously part of their power, but when we can do Cain and Abel, when Cain's sacrifice does not meet with approval, that then is the test. And that's very clear in the text that, sin is crouching at your door and it wishes to possess you, but you must master it. And that, Peterson always points to that verse. And what's interesting is that verse is very deeply tied, off the top of my head. It's always hard to do this off the top of my head. I believe it's very deeply tied to the curse that the woman gets with respect to her relationship with the man. The language in Hebrew is very, very close. There's a real parallelism there. And that's, I think, really where you get this world-making moment that, there's something, for Eve, there's the man and the woman, Adam and Eve, the curses that are pronounced are quite parallel with each other. The man with the earth, the woman with the womb. These are the arenas of productivity for both of them. And there will be testing in that for the man and the woman. And so then when you have this testing for Cain, and that's paralleled with the curse of the woman, the testing that is implicit in the curse. There's a lot there that each of us, and this is really where Peterson, I think, really stepped in. it came up in my conversation with Jim Wellman and Tripp that I just posted yesterday, that men and women too, but women so often it comes to them through childbearing. I mean, they're just through childbearing, they're just set up into this, that every child that is brought into this world comes at the risk of her life. And if that child is going to continue to flourish up through those formative years where she is responsible, it does so at the cost of her life, cost of her attention, cost of her energy, cost of her emotional investment. It's just, children are just so costly. And if your mother doesn't pay that cost, I was just thinking the other day, we have this phrase, pay attention, as if attention is something that costs us. And if you're a parent, you know it does, because there are times with those kids, it's like, gosh, why don't they leave me alone?
They're taxing me.
They are taxing you, exactly. And you have to pay attention. And if you don't, they will suffer. And that's true of motherhood. But now for men need to be given, men need to suffer. We need to have a challenge, and something in us drives us towards that. And we have no respect for the freshman who is unwilling to fight the sophomores. I mean, the whole thing is set up. I mean, I remember, again, they'd corner you in the coffee kitchen in the dorm, and all the freshmen inside, and all this, and one by one, you know, they would come in there and they'd grab you and they'd pull you out. And, you know, because you're a freshman, you don't really know the initiation, right? Or are they pulling me out too? What is, I mean, they're there to terrorize you. And someone would say, oh, that's horrible, they're traumatizing the freshmen. Yeah, they are, just a little bit, you know. Not too much, not, you know, and that's just it. You need just the right amount of trauma for it to serve.
Right.
Too much trauma, no, you're gonna break it. Not enough trauma.
Don't oversalt the dish.
Yes.
Don't overseason it.
That's right. And parents do this all the time. When a parent disciplines the child, you know, a timeout. You know, I used to watch my children squirm on that timeout. You know.
Yeah.
You know, my parents didn't do timeouts. We got spankings, but you know, and you begin to realize a timeout could be a little bit more effective because you're forcing that kid to internalize the punishment.
Yeah.
And nope, you got up, back. And then you know, it's just like you do with a dog. You turn, you know, stay, you look away, dog's looking at you. Nope.
Well, yeah. And like, you know, a punishment that's only there to be punitive is not a good punishment.
Right.
Punishments should always be corrective.
Yeah. Or
always be building something up. Like there's that creative element again. You're like why am I taking away your Xbox for a week? I mean, I can't explain to you that you have no self-control, and I'm trying to help you build that. And then also I'm trying to get you to have other interests other than Fortnite and Apex Legends. but I can't like explain that to you in the abstract. So I'm taking away your Xbox for a week. And then he sees that as punishment. But hopefully what's happening, dear God, I hope that he's actually like being built up in some way. And purely punitive things for punitive sake are they're no good. They're like, it's probably the definition of no good. Because and you see, like George MacDonald talks about a lot of this, which is so good, is like justice is always just, and it's always just for mercy to be done, you know, or mercy and justice are always intertwined completely. They're not separate things. The analogy I like to use is the father with the kid on the bike. And the kid has to learn to ride a bike. And what will happen if the kid can learn to ride a bike? Well, the whole world opens up to him. So, you know, there's a reason why that's like an archetypal image in our culture. And there comes a point though where the father lets go.
Yeah.
And the father basically has to be like,
Yeah.
in order for you to be a bike rider, I can't be in control.
Yeah.
And the kid may wreck and be like, why did you let go? Like, hopefully like it's only scrapes and bruises and nothing too severe, but
right.
at some point you just got to let go and see if the kid can ride. And,
Yeah.
with my youngest son, I didn't do that, but it was the same sort of thing where if I was around, he would just be like, please put on my training wheels, please put on my training wheels, please put on my training wheels. And sometimes I would, and sometimes I wouldn't. And if I didn't, he wouldn't even ride at all. But then he had a friend over that could ride. And I left, and his friend was doing little figure eights in the driveway. And like within 10 minutes, he was like, dee, 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 dee. Like I had to leave. I had to withdraw. And then he learned. And then I came outside and I was like, hey, you're riding. And he's like, I know, it's so cool. Like finally we could but I couldn't be there for
Yeah.
But that's just so how God does things for us. Sometimes we're like, why did you let go? Why did you leave?
Yeah.
All this stuff. And it's serious. I'm not trying to say that. And it's even to the level where, so back to the book of Job, like when after, so God and Satan talk, and then Satan like takes everything away, his family, his business, all of his property and his livestock and everything. And then God and Satan meet again after all this. And God says, why did you entice me against him for no reason? And there's a lot of beautiful things in there. One is that God's taking full responsibility. He's not like, what did you do? like this isn't my, he's like, why did you entice me against him? And then he also says, for no reason. And so like in this U-shaped journey stuff, I want to like make a point to say that like, it's not like everything has a reason. Everything has a purpose.
Yeah.
No, at the bottom is meaninglessness. It doesn't have a reason. It's like, it's just like Jordan Peterson's thing. It's just chaos. There's no purpose for it. It's only afterwards that can be seen as having any sort of purpose. And then you get to say what the purpose was. You get to look back and be like, that was terrible. And then you get to explain it, like what happened and what it did inside of you, and for good and for bad. But it makes, it really is meaninglessness. It's not like God's just pulling all these strings. He's like, all right, time to break some bones. It's actually that like
bone breaking today. Check.
But it's like the kid on the bike. There's a way in which God has to kind of move back in certain aspects in order for us to actually become something.
Yeah.
So anyway,
no, that's true. And the bike thing, I remember learning to ride a bike. I remember the park. I remember, I remember my father, he's got a hold of the back of the bike and he's running behind me. And of course on bike, you can go, even a little kid's bike, you can go pretty fast. My father was running to keep up. And then he's like, no, do this. And I'm not balancing well. And, and I remember doing that for my kids. But like you, I had 5 kids. So some of them just kind of, their friends, their brothers and sisters don't have training wheels on. So take the training wheels off, and then they just sort of frog around a little bit. But, and like you said earlier in the conversation, it's this weird thing where the other kids doing it in front of them, they're not, this rationality thing is so oversold. It's like the 4-year-old doesn't sit there and watch and take detailed notes of his 6-year-old brother riding the bike. He just watches, There's
Yeah.
no, narrativing or monologuing or, internal quiet math going on. He's just watching, and then
He's going to try to
doing it.
embody. Yeah. He's trying to embody it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're mysterious creatures. So, this was good. This was good. This was good.
Yeah.
I'm glad everybody said, "Oh, talk to Jess about the U-shaped journey."
Oh, there's more, Paul.
I'm sure
like
there is.
scratching the surface.
So what are you doing with all this stuff?
Oh, I've got a little project I'm working on, that maybe will show its head sometime soon. But other than that, I don't know. This was like, talking to you was part of getting it organized enough where I could like tell you about it.
Okay.
And then I don't know.
Well, you're an animator. I mean, you're going to do a little cartoon or a little video or something with
Well,
it, or
yeah. The
or
trouble is
you're
that
an illustrator, not an animator.
both.
Oh, both.
I'm everything, Paul. I went through a lot of U-shaped journeys. Yeah, so I don't know. Well, I'm trying to figure out what to do, and hope, a lot of this has been stewing inside of me for years and years. And I've been telling people, like, I've been talking with Sherry and Luke and Nate and Lance, and I have the estuary going. That's
good.
fun.
Good.
But all, like, I've been just like, I gotta do something. I can't just be stewing on this and talking about it.
Yeah.
So
You do have to do something. I mean, that's part of the obligation. It's part of the ought that you can't just have all this and sit on it. You got to figure out how to share it with others, and the world has blessed you with this. Now you have to bless the world with this. So that goes.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for talking. And it's good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too. So, well, let's, so people obviously can leave a comment in the video where they can find you at Bridges of Meaning Discord. You're around there sometimes.
Yeah, I'm Jess P on Discord.
Jess P on Discord, and you're on the Randos channel sometimes.
Randos United. And yeah, I can send you my email address to put in the description.
Let's not do the email address. Let's just,
all right.
just keep an eye on the comments, and you can share it as you will.
All right, that sounds good.
So otherwise you'll get videos from, I get videos from, hi, what's this last video I got something about, basically sent me an email with kind of a CV and everything. The person obviously doesn't watch my channel, but probably just found podcasts. And it's like, as if I have a shortage of people who want to come and talk on my channel. It's like, no, that's not my problem. That's not my problem at all. If you don't know me and I don't know you, just find somebody else out there with a little podcast that needs content.
You're up to your ears in it.
I'm up to my ears in content and wonderful conversation partners. And so the problem with me is figuring out both how to select and how to not be too rational in my selection. So
right. You never know what's going to come up.
No, you
don't. The corner.
You really don't. So anyway, Jess, it's always good talking to you. And
thanks, Paul.
This will come out in days or a week or something. Who knows when.
Sounds great.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.